So I think Canadians are getting to know the way I believe in cooperative federalism. I think it was important to come early on, sit down with Premier Ford, talk about the ways that we can work together to serve Ontarians and all Canadians. I think Canadians understand that we do better as a country when different orders of government are working collaboratively on the issues that matter to them, and that's certainly a point I highlighted to the Premier right off the top, and he was very receptive to that, of course. I also wanted to express directly my sympathies and my support for all those families who are experiencing this terrible wave of gun violence in Toronto. Obviously, our hearts go out to individuals affected, and I expressed to the Premier that the federal government is there to be supportive, to work with them to make sure we're keeping our citizens safe. This is something that matters deeply to all of us, not just in Toronto, but across the country. J'ai été très content de pouvoir m'asseoir avec le Premier ministre Ford pour parler de comment nous allons travailler ensemble dans les mois et les années à venir. Je pense que les Canadiens comprennent que c'est toujours mieux quand les différents paliers de gouvernement travaillent en collaboration sur les enjeux qui préoccupent les citoyens. Et bien sûr, il y a des enjeux sur lesquels on a des différends, mais je sais qu'il y a aussi beaucoup d'enjeux sur lesquels on va travailler ensemble. Et je pense que c'est une bonne chose pour les Ontariens et pour les Canadiens. J'ai aussi voulu souligner mes sympathies pour toutes les familles qui sont en train de vivre la vague de violence par les armes à feu que Toronto est en train de vivre. Nous sommes là, en termes de gouvernement fédéral, pour être partenaires et pour appuyer le travail que nous faisons tous ensemble pour garder nos citoyens en sécurité. Je voudrais aussi prendre un moment pour exprimer mes sympathies pour les victimes de la canicule, surtout au Québec, évidemment avec ces températures. Nous sommes très inquiets, surtout des personnes vulnérables et les personnes âgées qu'on devrait travailler pour mieux protéger dans ces situations météorologiques assez difficiles.
Prime Minister, the Premier has withdrawn Ontario's support for the asylum program that they were doing with the cities and with your government, and they've accused you of creating a migrant mess on that crisis. I just want to know what you think about that and what you're going to do now that Ontario is not cooperating with the federal government on this program.
This was the first opportunity I had to sit down with Premier Ford to talk about the asylum seeker issue and irregular migration. This is obviously something fairly important. It didn't seem to me that the Premier was quite as aware of our international obligations to the UN Convention on Refugees as he might have been. So I spent a little time explaining how the asylum seeking system works and how our system is supposed to operate. But at the same time, I agreed that it would be good for our officials to sit down and get clarity on how we can actually work together to ensure that we are holding true to our values, but making sure that our immigration and refugee system is being applied in its integrity. I reassured the Premier, I attempted to reassure the Premier that the asylum seeker stream is separate from the immigration stream. That Canada has always had a separate procedure to assess refugees and to determine whether or not they are indeed fleeing violence, persecution, and terror, or else they are simply economic migrants, at which point they would get sent home once their files are processed. It's important as leaders in Canada to continue to protect one of the great advantages that Canada has over so many other countries, particularly at this time, is that Canadians are generally very positively inclined towards immigration. People know that people coming here to build better lives for themselves actually contributes tremendously to our country and to our success. And this is something that we are going to continue to ensure that our immigration and refugee system is applied responsibly. C'était la première fois que j'ai eu la chance d'échanger directement avec le Premier ministre Ford sur les demandeurs d'asile. Et il m'a est devenu évident que le premier ministre n'avait pas tout à fait toutes les informations correctes par rapport à nos obligations internationales par rapport aux droits des réfugiés. Et j'ai souligné que quand quelqu'un vient, même de façon illégale au Canada, nous devons d'analyser leur dossier pour déterminer s'ils sont effectivement de vrais réfugiés ou non. S'ils ne le sont pas, ils vont être envoyés chez eux. Et j'ai souligné à quel point nous travaillons très collaborativement avec la province du Québec, par exemple, pour démontrer que de travailler ensemble avec les différents paliers de gouvernement, nous pouvons aider ces gens temporairement en attendant le résultat de l'analyse de leur dossier. Et j'espérais que nous allions pouvoir travailler ensemble avec l'Ontario comme on l'a fait depuis des mois. Mais j'ai souligné que nos différentes agences devraient se parler pour voir comment on va pouvoir travailler ensemble.
Mr. Prime Minister, Travis Stanraj, Global News. You have had a zero tolerance policy when it comes to allegations of sexual misconduct within your party. There are serious allegations against you right now. Why not call an independent investigation and put the story to rest?
Obviously, this is a situation that has been very much on my mind over the past few weeks. It's an issue that I have been deeply engaged with, not just as a leader, but all my life since my early 20s in university, active on issues around sexual assault and behaviors. I've been reflecting very carefully on what I remember from that incident almost 20 years ago. And again, I am confident that I did not act inappropriately. But part of this awakening that we're having as a society, a long-awaited realization, is that it's not just one side of the story that matters, that the same interactions could be experienced very differently from one person to the next. And I am not going to speak for the woman in question. I would never presume to speak for her. But I know that there is an awful lot of reflection to be had as we move forward as a society on how people perceive different interactions. Like I said, I do not feel that I acted inappropriately in any way, but I respect the fact that someone else might have experienced that differently. And this is part of the reflections that we have to go through.
Mr. Prime Minister, the question was, why not call an independent investigation if there are questions? And she says that you apologized.
Again, I've been reflecting on the actual interaction, and if I apologized later, then it would be because I sensed that she was not entirely comfortable with the interaction we had. Like I said, I've been working very hard to try and piece it together, and even when the original editorial came out at the time, I was fairly confident, I was very confident that I hadn't acted in a way that I felt was in any way inappropriate. But like I said, part of the lesson that we all have to learn through this is respecting that the same interactions can be felt very differently by different people going through them, and we have to respect that. And that's exactly what we're having to come to grips with as a society, and it's certainly something I'm continuing to reflect on.
So do you apologize now?
I apologized in the moment. I certainly feel that if again, I don't want to speak for her. I don't want to presume how she feels now. I haven't reached out to her. No one on my team has reached out to her, and we don't think that would be appropriate at all. So I'm responsible for my side of the interaction, which certainly, as I said, I don't feel was in any way untoward. But at the same time, this lesson that we are learning and I'll be blunt about it, often a man experiences an interaction as being benign or not inappropriate, and a woman, particularly in a professional context, can experience it differently, and we have to respect that and reflect on that.
Prime Minister, Mike Crowley from CBC. You've made it clear that your government will impose a carbon tax on Ontario if it does not have its own carbon pricing system. So is this going to end up costing Ontarians more than it would have under cap and trade? And how prepared are you to deal with the political backlash next year in an election year from an electorate that's just voted for Premier Doug Ford?
The Premier and I talked directly about the fact that we have very clear mandates from the people who elected us. The clear mandate that I got elected on was to bring in a national plan to fight climate change, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Obviously, it's better if we can work collaboratively with the provinces, but as we've seen, if provinces do not wish to be part of the national plan, the federal government will move forward on bringing in a carbon price backstop and returning directly, in this case to Ontarians, the money collected on the pricing of pollution. That's the carbon plan. Ideally, we work with the provinces. Failing that, we will ensure that it is still applied right across the country.
Prime Minister, Cynthia Mulligan from City News. You enjoyed a friendly relationship with Kathleen Wynne. Now you are dealing with a Premier of Canada's largest province that you have completely different ideological values. How are you really going to work together? I know you came here to be collaborative, but quite frankly, it doesn't seem like your relationship is getting off to a good start.
On the contrary, we had an excellent conversation about how we're focusing on standing united on the NAFTA front. This is something that obviously is of concern to Ontarians, indeed all Canadians. And on this most important file that we're living through this summer, we are very much aligned. And we talked at length about that. We're also aligned on the issue of increasing competitivity and continuing to invest in the middle class and those working hard to join it, invest in our small businesses. We're pleased that we're lowering taxes for small businesses. These are things that we look forward to working together on. There will be areas of disagreement, but I think I've demonstrated across the country, regardless of the political stripes of the various premiers, we can work constructively and collaboratively together, and that's exactly what I intend to do. Écoutez, je me suis fait élire, on s'est fait élire sur une plateforme très claire qui exigeait qu'on amène pour la première fois un plan concret pour s'attaquer au changement climatique à travers le pays. Évidemment, c'est toujours mieux quand on peut travailler en partenariat avec les provinces, mais si la province de l'Ontario décide de se retirer de notre plan sur la tarification du carbone, nous allons tout simplement continuer avec notre programme de façon du gouvernement fédéral et on va retourner directement aux Ontariens l'argent qu'on collectera sur la tarification du carbone. Je pense que les gens s'attendent à ce qu'on démontre un leadership concret en matière d'environnement et c'est exactement ce que nous allons faire. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.